Welcome to the Whiskey with Winners podcast, the show with business titans sharing their stories of the highs and lows of entrepreneurship. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite glass of whiskey, and listen to the real and raw stories of these industry leaders. Now, here's your host, the man, the myth, the legend, the most interesting marketer, Jacob Fail.
What's up, everybody? It's Jacob Fell, the most interesting marketer, CEO and founder of Brute Media Group. And today on the Whiskey with Winners podcast, we have one of the greatest entrepreneurs there is. We have Ovi, and he is actually the CEO and founder of Socialbee. I personally use Socialbee myself, and it was launched on AppSumo, and it's probably been one of the best AppSumo purchases that I've ever made. So Ovi, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your history, where you grew up, and we'll get into some other things.
Sure. So yeah, I'm Ovi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Socialbee, where we help companies get more leads with less effort. And we do this with our social media management platform that you talked about, that helps companies and entrepreneurs automate their social media posting. And besides that, or on top of that, we can even help with very specific marketing services, which are productized. And these are our concierge services that are being delivered by our team of both internal and freelance marketers that we work with. And we started Socialbee a little over 5 years ago. Before that, I had a career, let's say so, where I was doing other startups. I was working for corporates, for smaller companies, started in software development, worked up to leading and project management and running a small software company, and then jumped back into the startup world with Nugget and then Socialbee.
So take us back to young Ovi. Where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about that. And have you always wanted to be an entrepreneur and start your own business?
Mm-hmm. So I'm actually originally from Romania, and the team is also, most of the team is in Romania. I now live in Frankfurt in Germany, and I've lived also outside Romania in some other countries as well. But growing up in Romania and being born while still there was the communism regime, even though I don't remember that much of it because I was still quite young then, I don't exactly know where I got the entrepreneurship itch from, to be honest. Because my parents, they were not entrepreneurial at all. I talked with my mother the other day, and randomly, I just told her, look, I'm going stand-up paddling, and she was like, but watch out, there are so many risks and so on. So they're definitely not a risk taker type of profile. So I don't know exactly where I had that from, but I had it from an early age. So I remember one day I was we baked seeds, these seeds that you just eat. And I don't know how and why. And I tried to sell them to my neighbors downstairs. And my kindergarten teacher of back then just walked by, and I managed to sell her one of these seeds. And then when I told my parents, they were like, oh, how can you do that? You should have not taken money from her, which is obviously very counterintuitive when you're talking about entrepreneurship. Yeah. But nevertheless, it seemed like I had this, desire, let's say so. And even though I tried to do some entrepreneurial stuff, then I needed to go back. And I think it was a good thing to go back to a regular job and earn some money and maybe learn also a bit of things. But then entrepreneurship still pulled me back.
So growing up, obviously you had a little spark of entrepreneurship. That must have been weird growing up in a communist regime and how all that transpired. Obviously now things are a lot different and you're in Germany, but I mean, were your parents negative towards you? Because I know I get a lot of people on the podcast that say, their parents weren't supportive, or maybe they were supportive, but they didn't they just didn't really understand, right? And especially in like the marketing world and the software world and the tech world, it's, a lot of people think you're, dealing drugs or something because it's just like magic money. It comes from, just those reoccurring subscriptions. So were they supportive of you jumping into this, and how did you transition into becoming a software developer and hiring a team and all that?
So they were quite supportive of me in general, I would say, but still they were always against me taking risks. Like when I quit any job to start either another job or something entrepreneurial, they were always like concerned, because they were the type of generation where you started your life with a job and you ended your life with that same job. So I know 40, 50 years later, you would still be in the same company. Maybe you moved up or laterally and so on, but mostly you would be in the same company. So from that point of view, I think they were quite frightful, I would say, and tried to pursue me against it. But nevertheless, they understood that I will try to do some things, and probably I will try to do something which is still good. And the fact which I appreciate the most is that they understood when they didn't understand something. So they knew that, they said, look, I cannot give you any advice in this area because I don't know exactly what it is. How I'm thinking about this is this way or the other way. But they really knew that, okay, this whole IT stuff and marketing, that's totally new to them, and they were not able to give me advice very specific to those areas. They try to give more like general life advice, I would say so.
Yeah. Well, and that's very important to have parents that, maybe they don't understand everything, but they're still supportive. I mean, my parents are the same way, and a lot of other people's parents are the same way, that they want the best for you and they want to mitigate the risk. Right. And so, it's very hard whenever you're going through bad times, or even whenever you're going through good times. Sometimes they don't understand, what that's like. Now, I know that you said earlier that you sold a company, Nugget. So tell us a little bit about that company. It was it allowed you to skim through the book quickly and get like cliff notes of it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. Basically, we went a bit even more condensed than the cliff notes. Basically, Nugget was an app that brought quotes from business and personal development books. And actually, we started that with my current co-founder and two other co-founders, especially because all of us, but maybe especially me, I was reading a lot of business books and personal development books. I was highlighting a lot, but then I was not doing too much with those highlights. I did not go back to read them or to really discover books in this way. And at the same time, maybe, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, social media was filled with these inspirational quotes, either inspirational or from books and so on. And basically, I tried to marry these two parts, like the inspirational quotes and then the highlights from business books, into a product which was Nugget. The problem with Nugget was that it was a nice to have, not a must have. So it was a vitamin, not a painkiller. So even though we did manage to keep growing the subscription base, it was extremely hard for us to monetize that. And at one point, we realized that the techniques that we were using and the internal tools that we have built to grow on social media might be more valuable than Nugget. And this is how Socialbee was born. And at that point, we decided that we will stop working on Nugget altogether and focus on Socialbee. And lucky enough, there was somebody else in our space who was interested in both the technology and the content that we produced, but also our user base. So they acquired us, but it wasn't any like major acquisition that allowed us to retire or anything like that. It just, because also with Nugget, we supported all the costs ourselves. So basically we used our savings for that. And by selling it, it helped us like put some money back into those savings, which then went back to Socialbee.
Right. Well, that's good. I mean, that's good that you're constantly reinvesting into Socialbee, because like just to see the growth that you guys have had, because I bought whenever you guys first went on AppSumo, and I want to talk about Product Hunt and AppSumo because I know you've been on both of those, just to kind of talk to users about how that experience is, because I know you launched and I believe you made like, I think 250 or something within like the first couple of months. So tell us about that, like how the whole process and like has that actually helped your business grow and scale very quickly? Because especially in the software business, because I have a software as well, and it kind of becomes, like a lot of people don't like doing lifetime deals, but it helps you get that bulk money up front that will allow you to scale the development. So kind of talk a little bit about your experience with AppSumo and Product Hunt and what that looks like. And then, a little bit more about that whole process.
Yeah, sure. So for the people that have not heard about AppSumo, and I'm going to talk about AppSumo first, is basically it's a marketplace of various deals, mostly for entrepreneurs. They have software like ours, which is like the social media management software, but they have all sorts of various software that are needed in a small business usually. And what's particular about their deals is that they're lifetime deals. So basically, most of their deals, you just pay $49 and you get that software for life, which is crazy in today's SaaS world. But if we think back maybe 10 years ago, that's how software was sold. You paid a license, you paid it once, and you had it. Okay, maybe you didn't have the upgrades which come automatically in a SaaS world, but that's how it used to work. Now, obviously, especially if you would think that a customer stays with you for 1, 2, maybe even 3 years, then that $49 that the end customer pays for this lifetime, and out of which you just get a portion because you have to share it with AppSumo, that is not that much. But where you make it up is in volume. Because AppSumo has a massive audience and they can sell a few thousands of these codes relatively easily if it's a product which is a good fit for their audience. And if it's not, it will not get in there in the first place, probably because they really only allow the products that make sense for everybody. Yeah. And now the good part is that you will get a cash, a lump sum of cash that you can use to grow your product. The bad part, or not necessarily the bad part, but it also comes with a cost, meaning that you will have to support these few thousands of customers for the lifetime, basically. And it's something that you really have to be mindful about, and to really know if you have any variable costs which can actually make it so that in maybe a year or so you will just keep losing money because of high bandwidth costs or whatever cost that might be associated with your server. Now, in our case, we do have server costs, but they're not huge, so it's not such a big problem. This is on one hand. And on the other hand, I think it's also, there's a good time and place for somebody to launch on AppSumo. And that time is when you're early, but not too early. So your product has to be good enough, and especially nowadays, the products that come on AppSumo, they're better and better. So they're like real, it used to be like maybe a few years ago that there were like almost like beta versions, but now they're like full-fledged products that really are similar to other offerings you would find out there. But nevertheless, you should not be too far along in terms, especially of your revenue and recurrent subscription base, because first of all, you will find people that are already on your list, but also know about AppSumo, who might cancel your monthly subscription and switch to the lifetime plan, which is, I consider that as part of doing business on AppSumo. Yeah. But then it's also important for you to be there at the time and place where with AppSumo, you don't just get the money, you also get the thousands of users, which can then offer you feedback, which is very valuable, especially early on, and then can also create buzz around your product, which will help you then turn that buzz into hopefully monthly recurring revenue. So for somebody that's at that stage where their product is good enough, they have the first few customers, but not too many of them, I would definitely recommend an AppSumo experience, and they can even reach out to me, and I can give them maybe a few other tips based on their specific needs. But if you're like too advanced, maybe it's not the place, unless you have some other upselling opportunities. So in our case, we did a few AppSumo deals, just because we also have the concierge services. So somebody that bought a lifetime deal can still be upgraded to a monthly service with the concierge plan. But for anybody else, I would not recommend doing this multiple times.
Yeah. Well, and the cool thing too about AppSumo is you're able to put like layers, like tiers, like you guys did. And I know that I bought like the highest package with like everything. And I just got to use all of my codes to to do all those. But and that's a way to get bulk money up front. But once it, I'm sure that it injected probably 1,000, 2,000 users, or maybe even more into your guys' business. And once they love it, and then they start telling, their 3 friends about it, it just compounds very, very quickly. Because I know you said earlier, you guys are at like 18,000 users. And so, how did, like, what's the retention like on that? And how long did it take you to scale from 0 to 18,000 users?
Yeah, so indeed, we did get a few thousands of users from these AppSumo deals, and we actually did a few of them. And then what's important is to really put that cash that you get from AppSumo to good use. And I would split this in 2. One would be investing in the product, because you will get a lot of feedback from your audience, from the newfound audience. Plus, I'm sure that when you launch, you have a whole product roadmap that you are thinking of already. But then besides that, it's really important to start scaling up your marketing if you haven't done that already, and work on marketing channels that will consistently bring new customers. Because that money will run out. And then if you haven't been able to grow that monthly recurrent revenue to the place that you would want this to be, either so you can break even and be profitable, or so you're able to raise some more money to keep growing the company, then you will be in trouble, because you still have these customers that you need to support. In our case, I think we didn't do a good enough job when we first launched on AppSumo to really focus on marketing. We had so much to do, or such a big vision for the product, that we just went heads down on the product side. And if I would do it again, I would split a bit more evenly between product and marketing. And actually, regardless of AppSumo, I would do marketing from day one with any product, because especially some of these more evergreen marketing channels like content marketing and SEO and things like that, and partnerships, they take time to develop. So that's why it's important to start early as you start building up the product.
Yeah, definitely. Now, talking about that, I want to talk about like what's some of the biggest struggles that you've had, especially like in product development, talking, with different developers and hiring a team and just building a product from the ground up. What's been your biggest struggle or your biggest pitfall, and what would your advice be to other people?
So I think it's really important to find that development team that really works well together and can also scale quickly and can work on products quickly. And in our case, we always were very fast, especially in the beginning, to develop new features, which sometimes also meant that we took some shortcuts, and we knew that that's just technical debt, which will end up costing us later on, but we were willing to take that cost early on. So even during the first AppSumo, basically, my co-founder, who's the CTO, he rebuilt our whole engine. So basically, he rebuilt the whole ship while we were frying it in such a way that it didn't crash, and that we didn't have any problem with the servers crashing, which luckily we did not have any such problems yet. But it's important to know that whenever you are taking these shortcuts in the product development cycle, which I think you should sometimes, especially in the beginning, to remember that that debt will have to be paid at one point. And maybe it's later on, once you raise more money and you can have a bigger team, or at one point you will just have to know that, okay, we actually did plan to grow with, I know, so many thousands of users, and we did grow to that level. So that means that our servers are slower and slower. We need to stop, or we need to pause new feature development for a while to redo our architecture, so it's even more scalable. Because it's important to do this right on time, because if you over engineer something from the beginning, you might, and of course everybody thinks and wants for their startup to be highly successful and to be servers to be crashing all the time because of the many users that join. But unfortunately for most of the startups out there, that's not the real problem, or that's not the problem that will kill you, but rather too few users. So that's why I think we did it properly, that we didn't like over invest in the beginning in the scalability part. We did just enough, just in time, and so far it worked. Now, the other thing which we did from day one, and it's something that I would definitely recommend, is to try to use as many other third-party implementations or integrations as possible. So actually, before going on AppSumo, Socialbee started off as a very hacked together solution of Google Sheets and Zapier integrations, and even posting through Buffer and having RSS that's being set up manually by me in Zapier and things like that. So that was definitely not a scalable solution, but that solution worked well enough for us to get that first customer, and then the first dozen of customers, and then for us to really realize that, okay, there's potentially a business here, so we can invest into building that solution more long term.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and that's a big thing too, right? Is the minimum viable product is actually having that to where, you're not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars making this, but you still have, you have a minimum viable product that you can go to market with, which is what I tell my developer guy all the time, is like, let's just get the MVP out. Let's put it to market. Let's see how they respond. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? And I think that especially in the software world and even in the marketing world, is people, they overthink things too much, and they're like, oh, well, I got to have this perfect. I got to have this color. I got to do this, right? But it's like, is it functional? Does it work? Does it do the job that it's supposed to do? Yeah, it might be, pieced together in all different ways, but it's still going to get you way ahead of the game versus, never starting, right? You have to at least start to get to somewhere, right? Now, I did want to talk to you about like software and where you think software companies are going in the future. Like, what does the next 3 to 5 years look like for you and for Socialbee? And do you have any new projects that you guys are working on that you can talk about?
Yeah, I'm going to answer this, but let me go back a bit to what you said earlier about the MVP, which I think it's a very important point. And especially if whoever is at the reins of that startup is a technical person, most likely they will think, okay, I need to build everything. I need to make sure everything is working properly. Oh, I also need that function and that other functionality. And I need to also make sure that it scales and whatnot and so on, which, yeah, you might need later on, but it's later on that you need that. And there are two things here. One is that we have the adoption cycle, where basically the first people that adopt the product are the innovators who are looking out for products that are really new, and they like to test out new products, and they actually like to test them while they're in a beta stage. So they don't mind quirks, they don't mind that things are not working perfectly, and they don't mind that the functionality is not fully there and it's harder to use than expected. Now, of course, if you want to move to the later stages, to the early adopters, then the early majority, and especially to the late majority, you will have to round your product and make sure that it works perfectly and it can be used by anybody. But without these innovators and early adopters at first, it will be very hard for you to get to later stages. So that's why it doesn't matter. You don't need to build out that perfect product. You need to build a MVP and to find these early adopters that are willing to give it a try, and then to give you feedback to improve it better, because it will be much better for you to build things based on real life feedback than all of your thoughts and ideas, which probably some of them will be good, but some you will see that nobody asked for a specific functionality that you maybe built initially. This is one point I wanted to make. And the second point is that even before the MVP, the minimum viable product, there's something which is called concierge MVP. And this is something that I really like a lot. And it's something that more or less we did as well. And it's also a model which I call sell, service, scale. So at first you have to sell the end results. Then you service that customer regardless how you do it. Like in our case, as I said, it was Zapier integrations with Google Sheets and posting through Buffer and manual work and so on. And only then you do the scale part, where basically this is where once you know that you were able to find a market for your solution, you are able to service those customers, so you know exactly what their needs are, and you even know how they talk about that problem, which will be very important in your marketing and so on. Then when you have to scale, you know exactly what you need to build, you know exactly how your marketing has to look like, where your target audience are online and how you can find them and so on. And this way, first of all, you won't waste time on building even an MVP for something that's not needed. And second, by the time you really build something, you have a better understanding and you build something more proper with less investment and so on. Now,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and to go back to your other question about where do I think the software world is going. This is something that I've been saying for quite some time, but I think like it's more apparent every day. All the major software players, all the major startups are doing everything nowadays. Like even if you look at the very, very top of the pyramid chain, if you look at Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, you will see that maybe 5 or 10 years ago, you knew exactly Amazon is an e-commerce provider and Facebook is a social network and Microsoft offers productivity software and so on. But nowadays, everybody's doing almost everything. They have so much overlapping between them that is crazy. And also on the software side, if you look at the big software for marketing providers, for example, or for accounting software, or almost any industry you can think of, you can see that they're building more and more products which are not core to what they had before, but maybe they're addressing the same customer, first of all, and also needs which are not the same as the original need, but still related. So basically they keep growing that pie that way. And I really think that the future will belong to these all-in-one software solutions. And this is also our bet. So coming back to your question about what are our plans for the future, we are also working already on 2 totally new products, which will, one of them is in the social media world, another one is more outside of the social media world. And we have basically a suite of products that we want to build over the next few years, where they will all work perfectly fine independently, but the magic will happen once we have them all working very well together.
Yeah. And I see lots of companies doing that now, that they're, piecing everything together. Like Google has G Suite and they have all the different like individual products, but they still all merge together. And I agree with you. I really think that 90% of software is going to go to that, to where, they all merge together and they all can technically function independently, but whenever used together, it's definitely more powerful. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about team and culture, because I know you're always putting, funny puns and different things inside of your emails and stuff like that. And I know a lot of people enjoy that, me included, but how do you build a team culture, at Socialbee, and how do you find the right hires inside of your company?
I think it's really important for the founders to be really involved, especially in the early days. And I've heard even extremes where some very high level companies, the founders were involved in hiring even the first 500 employees, which I think is maybe a bit towards the crazy end of things. But nevertheless, for us, it was important to bring in those crucial hires at first, and for them to be really aligned with us as founders, and with both our vision, but also more about our values and just how we are or were as people. And in our case, I think what was important, especially early on, was that we also treated recruiting as a marketing activity. So we really created those job sites in such a way that it reflected our tone of voice and our values and what we are looking for in the candidates. And that way, I think we also attracted the right candidates. Plus, we had a good screening system where we made sure that we would rather hire somebody that's unexperienced, which, to be honest, that was also our budget back then, to only hire most of the times people that maybe they were even at their first job. But people that, even though they lacked experience, we saw the drive and the passion and the willingness to learn. And then also us internally, we are quite a procedures-oriented company, meaning that we have internal trainings and processes and procedures for most of the major things that we do. So because of that, we were allowed to put a bit more effort maybe into creating the initial set of these processes and procedures. And then to make sure that even though we hire people that don't have experience, they can go through that, they can go through our internal trainings and then learn that way. And also what's important, I think, is really to make sure that you take especially a close look to the people that you promote, because those people, and especially the people who will then lead some teams later on or help with the recruiting and so on, they will be the next filter for the candidates and for the culture that you want to set. And in our case, our company always had a history of more or less of a hybrid working model, because most of the times almost everybody was in the same office, but I was somewhere around the world, wherever I lived back then. And because of that, we also developed a culture where we do use Slack all the time, even if everybody's in the same office. But then we also have internal trainings that are recorded, or they're being created in written form in such a way that whenever we have a new hire, we can already give them a full set of things that they can look at, and everybody gets trained in the same way. So I think that also helps to enforce the culture that we have.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's great, because we're doing something very similar about, allowing people to work and travel and building things up from the ground, from the ground up, and starting to instill those values and just starting from day one, instilling those values and training them on all the SOPs. That way, it's a repeatable process. They can do it anywhere in the world. It doesn't really matter, as long as they get their work done, everybody's happy. And I think that's great. Now, I did want to talk a little bit about remote jobs and work and travel and stuff, because I'm very sure that you've traveled a lot of places. How does that affect you as a CEO and your team culture? And how did you manage traveling around the world or traveling to these different places while running a company?
Yeah, I think so. Even though I did sometimes travel or sometimes actually lived in various other places, it was never this type of I'm working from my hammock on the beach type of thing. Yeah. And for anybody who tried that, to work on a laptop from a hammock, they know that that's impossible. There's no way you are actually comfortable and get any work done in the heat of a beach and with laying on your back and so on. So whenever even we had that scenario, I always had more or less proper work environment. Mm-hmm. And especially in the early days when we were just starting up and we were it was a life or death situation almost on a daily basis. I really worked a lot of hours and worked them on whatever time zone I needed to be. So I remember in our first year or first couple of years, at one point I was living and working from Singapore, and our customers were mostly in the US. So I was taking customer calls at 2 a.m. and doing whatever was needed. Now, since then, I also have colleagues who are actually doing these calls instead of me, and we have a colleague in the US and one in Europe, so we can we can handle all of the time zones without anybody having to be up at 2 a.m. But in the early days, that's what was needed, and I think that's also why it worked for us, because it was like this more or less from the beginning. So we got used to working on Slack. We got used to being in Zoom calls and things like that. and which was also something positive when the whole Corona situation happened, and we shut down our office. Like, we were among the first companies to do that, but we didn't, like, except for the I know, restlessness that happened, especially in the first early days when nobody knew what was happening. We didn't have a problem with adapting with everybody working from home. We didn't have to, like, supervise the people to make sure that everybody's doing their job and so on, because that was to some extent part of our DNA.
Yeah, and I agree with you that that's one thing that came out, that was positive about 2020 is everybody's kind of transitioned to this remote work environment. And, and I agree with you too, that nobody can get any work done from a hammock, right? So, especially on a nice beach, but I think that now that everything is transitioning into more of a hybrid world, I would like to call it, and people are doing more of these Zoom meetings instead of face to face because, coronavirus is still upon us, but it's not as bad now that, the vaccines are out and the cases are lower. But I think that that's helped a lot of digital marketers and software companies, and even just normal companies that normally would make you come to the office every single day. I think that they're seeing they can lower their overhead by shutting down their office to half capacity. And now people can just work, on their own time. And that's something really great that not, especially coming from like our parents' generations, not a lot of people realize that you could do that, especially in the internet world now. There's so much opportunity out there, and I don't think a lot of people see that. I think people are just kind of following in their parents' footsteps, and they're, just going to a job that they hate, or maybe they're not, they don't want to take that risk and go out on their own. And that's something that I'm glad that 2020 happened. Obviously not all the craziness, but that's one of the things that I do believe is a positive coming out of the whole coronavirus environment. Now I did want to ask you what's your future for Socialbee? Like, do you guys plan to do an IPO? Do you just plan to keep it as your company forever? Like, what's kind of your end game? And I know that a lot of founders, start with an end game in mind. Like, what is your vision? What is your dream? Like, what do you guys want to do with Socialbee?
I think for the time being, we really like what we're doing, and we actually also enjoy helping other entrepreneurs grow their businesses, because that's most of our target audience. They're entrepreneurs, some smaller, maybe solopreneurs, some maybe they have a slightly larger business, but most of the times it's like helping other businesses grow, and we really enjoy doing that. And especially with the new product suite that we're working on, we really want to grow the ways in which we can help our customers. And for the time being, we're just focused on that. Now, I know that if we continue doing that, and if we keep growing, both in terms of customers, but also in terms of our product offering, I know that regardless of what we will want to do in the future, be that an IPO or be that somebody acquiring us or something like that, we will have that option. From time to time, we're also considering raising money so we can grow faster. So far, even though we went back and forth between this, we decided to just continue growing at our own pace and funding everything from our revenue. And this is what our current plan is also for this next products that we will be building. But at one point, I would actually want to be able to get to an IPO, not only for us, the founders, but also to reward my colleagues that have been with us for a long period of time. And it's not only the financial reward, but I think it's also a sense of pride to be able to get to that place. Now, our space, there are quite a lot of competitors in our space, and especially in this newer product suite that we're going into, even more or bigger competitors will be in there. So we're trying to carve out our niche to make sure that there's a place for us and that we bring value to our customers, which we did with Socialbee. So we're hoping we will be able to do with the new products as well. And then I don't look so much into the more distant future where is it an IPO, is it an acquisition? we're just working for now to keep bringing value. And we really like what we're doing, both my co-founders and the team and so on. So we're just focused on that at the moment.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I wanted to transition and ask you a couple of fun questions, and then we'll wrap up here in just a minute. So what is your favorite personal growth or business book that you've read?
One book which I definitely recommend a lot is The Image Revisited by Michael E. Gerber. It's a book which really shows you how to think about your business as a franchise, or how to think about your business in the terms that you would be selling your business, even if you would never want to sell it or never want to franchise it. Because it really shows you the importance of having very exact process and procedures in place for to be in such a way that basically you don't have a job, but you actually have a business. Because if your company stops growing or even dies, if you have to take a 1 month or a few months off, then basically you don't have a business, you have a job. And the Image Revisited really shows you how to work against that.
That's awesome. And then what has been your favorite place to travel?
So I mentioned that I lived in Singapore for about 6 months, and it's definitely one of the places that I would always want to go back. First of all, because Singapore is amazing. I really also like the food there, the weather, and so on. But also second, because it's like the gateway to the whole of Asia, which again is amazing. Now, we already have planned a trip to Iceland this summer, and I've heard very good things about it. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe I'm going to change my answer after that. But for now, I would say Singapore would be it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've always wanted to go to Iceland and Singapore. I haven't, I've traveled a lot, but my goal this year is to try and get out to Europe and go to all those countries out there, because I know they're all interconnected and it's super quick travel in between different countries. So maybe I'll have to visit you in Germany.
Yeah, I was going to say, let me know if you get to this part of the world.
Yeah, sounds good. Now, I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite food, especially since you've traveled a lot?
It's definitely Chinese, but the very spicy type of Chinese food. There's like here aubergine scharf. I'm in Germany, so I'm saying it in German, but it's basically eggplant, which is very spicy. And I would say that's something which we eat almost on a weekly basis because we love it so much. I've also discovered this previous weekend a Peruvian cuisine, which was surprisingly good. It was more of a like avant-garde type of Peruvian cuisine. So I don't know if it's exactly like the usual Peruvian cuisine, but it was quite good. So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Now, my last question for the day is, if today was your last day, what would you want to be remembered by or remembered for?
Oh, wow. I think it also depends by whom. Like at the end of the day, I think I would care more about the ones that are close to me, that they remember me as somebody that they loved and they wanted to have around, and that was there for them. And then obviously with the entrepreneurship, I think there's also a want, either sometimes like explicitly said, or maybe sometimes you don't even know it, to leave your mark on the world. And in our case, we really want to help other entrepreneurs and the small guy or girl to really get ahead and be able to fight the big corporations, or to be able to basically have a growing business. And basically, I think when it comes to our customers and the entrepreneurs, I would want them to think that I helped contribute, even if a very small percentage, I helped contribute to their success, or at least to their trying to become successful.
Awesome. Well, thank you for everything, Avi. Thank you for being on the Whiskey with Winners podcast. Where can everybody find you, or where can they connect with you?
And Jacob. They can just find me. I'm on all the social networks, but if they want to connect, Ovi at socialbee.io, that's the best way. They can obviously find out about Socialbee at socialbee.io. And I'm really happy to learn from all sorts of people and to see if maybe even I can help some way. So don't be shy and do reach out.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the Whiskey Winners podcast, and we'll chat with you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Whiskey with Winners podcast, your home for real and raw stories of industry titans. Make sure to click the button below to subscribe. Follow our journey on Instagram at Most Interesting Marketer and Anchor, Stitcher, YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. Remember to always stay humble, stay hungry, and stay focused.
Everything that I'm saying is out of context. Wait, it's not even really a contest. See, if you already know, then I'm next. Looking at a bodybuilder like Y-Flex. I'm dope in the pot like it's Pyrex. And I do it big just like a T-Rex. A T-Rex, I'm the best to ever do it. You know, could be so dope when he flow to the fucking music. Like, this shit is nasty for real. Yeah, I'm dope. You don't even have to ask me for real, man. Damn, I think I'm going long, I'm going hard. Woo. Who you know could come up with the bars? I'm a shooting star. I shine bright in the fucking night, and they can't tell me that I'm doing wrong. I do it right, like I'm at the top. So who you know could really top that? Yeah, and tune in to the podcast.